joined here together with our first camp master in Boom Esports Indonesia's CEO, Gary.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thanks for
Good
having
morning,
me.
Gary. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you guys?
I've heard yesterday there was an earthquake that hit Indonesia. Am I right? Or
Not that I'm aware of. It could be like the other cities, but I don't think it's where I'm living in Jakarta. But fortunately enough, but no, I'm not too updated. Um, I didn't. I'm not too updated about the earthquake.
so how was your day, Gary? How are you feeling today?
It's good. It's good. Yeah. Obviously with all the whole COVID stuff, just kind of staying home, play a couple of games. So yeah, it's just been a chill day, a chill weekend.
Oh yeah. Let's just wait for our other audience to come to the meeting. So.
For sure. No rush. Is this thing like sorry, I'm just curious, is this thing like live on YouTube or obviously we're on the G Meet, but
Yeah, it's live on Facebook on our
oh,
page.
okay. Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
It looks like we're complete here, Camp Master Gary. So before we start the session, we've got some questions for you to answer. Are
Yeah,
you
yeah,
ready?
yeah, go for it. Yeah, go for it.
So
I'll
first,
answer to the best of my ability.
yeah, of course. How do you define or measure success in your esports team?
Um for me personally, because I followed esports for a long time. I used to play Counter Strike 1.6 competitively back in high school, middle school. So
Mm.
competition is something that's important to me. And if you look across all the esports team in the world, this value sometimes kind of missed, right? Where it's not really about the achievements and the performance; it's about the followers, the commercial side of things, and whatnot. But so in Boom, at least, I try to hold ourselves to the high standard of competition, right? And so for me, success is winning a tournament, qualifying to big events, and all that stuff. Yeah.
So I'm assuming you're a gamer yourself, Camp Master Gary. So back in your glory
Yeah.
days, was establishing an esports team at all part of your long-term ambition, or was it like all just a coincidence?
Yeah. So I think if we talk about the history of Boom and how it all happened. Growing up, I was a big football fan. Soccer, football. I don't know what you guys are more familiar with the terms. And so I always kind of followed that. A lot of football teams and all that stuff. And then, but obviously, owning a football team is something, you know, really more unrealistic, I'd say, right, in terms of cost and all that stuff.
Uh huh.
And then obviously, like I said, I used to be competitive and I followed the scene. And then, there were teams like Fnatic back in the day, and I thought that these guys are really cool, right?
Yeah.
So kind of like always followed the scene and keeping an eye on it, I'd say. And then I think when I was doing my studies in the US 2015 2016, esports really grew in the United States, right, in the Western world. I remember the E-League major was like on primetime TV on a weekend, like 8 p.m. spot, stuff like that. So then this was kind of what made me then kind of wanted to do esports, right? Because I saw it as a legit career path. Let's put it that way, right? Maybe in Asia or Southeast Asia, we're a bit behind in terms of development and whatnot. At least 3-4 years ago, but then there is this possibility that could happen eventually, right? So then I just kind of followed. Obviously I did Boom as a hobby firstly, and then work other stuff. But then it kind of took a lot of my time. So then I just started, hey, why don't I try to do this full time and take it seriously, something like that. Yeah.
Oh, that statement when you said it started as like a hobby and then it turned into like a big ambition for you. So
Yeah.
How's it been going? Like, what makes up a good team in your roster?
I think, to be honest, for me, in esports, skill I think can be taught, right? Just because we're in the realms of a game, and this is my personal opinion. I think that because we're playing games, it's like even in the games, it's kind of coded in a way where there's limits, right? Like you're technically being limited by the game itself, right? Like if you click at a certain second, you're always gonna get the last hit and all that stuff. Like theoretically speaking, right? Whereas if we talk about like traditional sports, then you're kind of putting a limit on a human, and you can't really do that, right? Because over the years and all that stuff, people kind of humans like they just exceed expectations, right? Like Cristiano Ronaldo is suddenly, running really fast, jumping really high, and all that stuff. But in a game, I feel that you're limited by the codes in the games. So what I look for in players or in a pro team is actually their attitude. I think that's the most important thing, right? People, I think the biggest misconception that a lot of people have is that having being a pro player is easy, and it really isn't. The example I always give example is for example, like my CS:GO team, they could spend like 2-3 hours just throwing smokes just to perfect their smoke, make sure that when it's game time they don't mess up the smoke and there's no gaps. And I don't know if you guys have tried it, but throwing smokes for 3 hours is definitely not fun. Like I don't think anybody in the world goes like, oh, this is really fun, this is what I want to do. It's not fun. And so I look for the attitude, right? You gotta have the right attitude to treat it as an actual job. So obviously, a lot of these pro players, before they get contracted and whatnot, they are more than likely a casual gamer. You know what I mean? And then when you take that next step to the pro level, it's like it's really different, right? You have like curfew, you have like actual like training like schedule where you have to like play 8 to 10 games a day, something like that, and then film review, all that stuff. So what I look for is the attitude in the players, whether you can, you're willing to really go all in, you're really willing to work hard, you're going to be able to take criticism and all that stuff. Um, so yeah, I think that's more important than the actual skills, because skills can be taught, right? But
Yeah.
this stuff, I think it's like a personality of a human, right? You either we're born with it, or like you have it, or you don't. Yeah.
So what you're saying is, other than skill, attitude and resilience is like a must, right?
Yep. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
During times of conflicts and obstacles, is there like a method of how Camp Master Gary motivates his team? Like in what ways?
Um, I mean, you know, I usually have a coach or a manager that kind of does that, but I try to, at least before every game, I always give them like some kind of encouragement, right? Just like good luck, you guys can do this, all that stuff, and then just kind of hype them up mentally, kind of like that. And especially I think in the beginning, if you talk about Dota, we weren't really like we weren't like a Fnatic or a TNC where we had like five strong names and we were like going to be really good, right? It took a couple of years of practice and all that stuff, and then obviously for some of the players, they also have like they're like starstruck when they start scrimming against Fnatic, like people that they used to watch streams with, and then now they're playing at the same level and all that stuff. And I just kind of remind them that, look, the fact that you're in the same competition as them and all that stuff, like have some respect to yourself, right? Like like sure, you guys used to look up to these guys, but now they're you're basically at their level, right? So you don't have to kind of be scared or think that they're better than you and all that stuff. Yeah. And I just kind of remind them that, make sure that they just give their best, and then that's the only thing we can do, right?
Thank you for the answer. And this is like second to the last question. Since you're the CEO and like the owner of Boom Esports Indonesia, what are like the most important attributes a successful leader should have, such as yourself?
um I think that, well, for me, right, I guess what I would share is the aspect that I think is really important, but maybe I myself am lacking sometimes, right? So what I think would improve myself, I think is the best way to answer it. For me, the most important thing is that obviously we're in a competitive business, right? Like competitions, and expecting to win 24/7 is kind of unrealistic, you know. And even when you win, we always have haters, right? Like you can't please everyone, and that's something that's kind of hard, you know. Like you try your best to kind of either make Indonesia proud, make our fans proud. I don't know if we have some fans in the Philippines. I think we do because it's Dota, right? We
Yes.
try to do the best for you guys, and then sometimes, you know, when we lose or we throw, sometimes we throw, right? Like, you know, obviously nobody really wants to throw, but you know, hey, we're going against, you know, like let's say we go against TNC, like they're also really good, right? Like it's two really good teams. Like,
Really
you
good.
know, yeah, it's just like in any sports, right? You know, even the Lakers can lose, even Manchester United, you name it, Liverpool can lose, Real Madrid can lose. So, and it's hard to sometimes kind of, you know, you just always want to win, right? But you know that losing is going to be there, and it's hard to accept it sometimes. And then, you know, the harsh words of the fans sometimes when we lose kind of hurts, but you know, you just got to get used to it. But yeah, so I think the most important thing to summarize is kind of just, you know, you got to be patient, right? Great things take time. You know, nothing is built overnight, right? Even the best teams, you know, you get the five best players, it's gonna take time for them to gel and mesh and all that stuff. So, yeah, you need a lot of patience, right, to really be at the where you want to be, right at the top. Yeah.
So Cap Master Gary, since you're having this session with lots of aspiring talents and youths, do you see a bright light of future when it comes to talented youths and esports? When those things collide, like, do you see a bright light when it comes to the future?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I mean, I think, you know, esports is one of the best channels for the, you know, what do you call it, Generation Z, I think, right? The millennials. So, and it's actually getting recognized, you know, as an official sports and all that stuff. You know, we're being, there's going to be esports in Sea Games. It already has been, there already has been esports in Sea Games. I heard there's going to be one in Olympics, upcoming Asian Games and all that stuff. So, you know, I think it's a legit career path and it's definitely bright. And then what I always tell people is that, you know, um, obviously now that we're at this level, at the same time, you know, it's kind of like in football and basketball, right? I'm sure a lot of us here grew up wanting to be a pro football player or a pro basketball player, but, you know, reality is not as such. And this is the same in esports, actually. You know, at the end of the day, the top esports athletes, you know, there's a reason that they're at that level, you know, like it's supposed to be hard. Not everybody's supposed to make it. You know, I'm trying to say, like
Yeah.
it actually is that select, you know, few percentage that can make it at the highest level, right? But then at the same time, you know, don't be discouraged because now that esports is going towards a more professional path, there's a lot more what do you call it, like career that you can take in esports, right? For example, like, you know, graphic designers, video editors, managers, coaches, and all that stuff. So yeah, I think the future is really bright for esports.
Ooh, I hope our viewers heard that because so this is your last question, Camp Master Gary. With your expansion towards the Brazilian esports team, MIBR, am I right? What are
Yeah,
the
we
things?
actually sold them to MIBR. Yesterday was the announcement. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
So what are the things you consider in scaling up your team in terms of diversity, especially in age, culture,
yeah.
in language? Yeah.
I think for us, it started with the simple, you know, when I created Boom, what is it that I wanted to achieve in the esports world, right? And for some people, it's, you know, it's going to be like business oriented, right? Oh, I see this as a new attractive industry that can make a lot of money. It connects a lot to the hard to target market and all that stuff business wise. But then for me, purely, you know, I created Boom because I wanted to have a team that can compete toe to toe with the best in the world. So then when I look for expansions or whatnot, I'm actually just looking at the best possible options. That makes sense, right? It has to make sense too. So what makes sense? I guess I can share that. You know, first is it has to be kind of like, you know, people care about this game, right? There's a lot of games that is very localized. There's one that, you know, I think you guys and us in Indonesia knows. I'm not going to mention the game title, but you know, winning that competition, unfortunately, you know, it's not going to make the world pay attention, right? To be honest. So we try to find games where, you know, if we can do something meaningful in that game, the world will pay attention to us, right? Because that's the vision, to be the number one esports team in the world, to be, you know, toe to toe with Liquid, Face Clan, and all that stuff. And again, to do that, you got to pick, the games that would take you to that level, right? Where the world would actually be like, oh, you guys actually won a proper world championship, something like that. Yeah.
So since you've said your answers and your wonderful, wonderful insights, we'll be slowly transitioning to our classrooms. So you'll have to interact with our viewers. Stand by. Thank you, Camp Master Gary. Thank you.